Good afternoon, friends. This is Laura with Potpourri of Life. I hope that you're having a great Saturday. What I'm doing today, we got the cold weather coming in. Today it's chilly and it's raining out and it feels like snow could be on its way. I haven't looked at the weather forecast because I don't believe it half the time. I use it kind of as a guide. It might happen. But it's cold out there. And when we get these temps, and whether it's raining, snowing, whatever it could be, we run the risk of having sore throats, colds, and all that kind of stuff. We're not talking about the serious viruses out there, but even still, what I'm making today can benefit these. It doesn't cure. What it does is it helps with those symptoms. And as I've shared before in another one of like cold things that you should probably have on hand, is that we need to let our viruses that we get run its course unless it's a serious situation where it's causing breathing difficulties, or if you're vomiting. There are many key factors that mean get to the hospital. But oftentimes a regular cold or a flu, it takes a couple of days to get through. So I'm going to show you how I make elderberry syrup. There is a basic recipe. The basic recipe is 1 cup fresh elderberries. But I don't have fresh elderberries on hand. My elderberry trees did not produce berries this year. I'm hoping for next year. But even still, I would have to dry them so that I could use them throughout the winter season. So what I'm going to be using, instead of 1 cup of fresh berries, I'm using half a cup of dried elderberries. You can get dried elderberries online as well as your health food store that many towns have, or pretty close by to many people, or you can order online. So I am going to put in a half a cup of elderberry berries, and that's what is in here. So we're going to put together a half a cup. The other thing that we need to do with this is we need to put 3 cups of water. I'm using filtered water because that's my go-to. So I'm going to pour the elderberries in here. And if you go a little over, you go a little over. It's certainly not going to hurt the syrup at all. I should have gotten a spoon to do this, but I didn't. Okay, so I got my half a cup of elderberries, and I got a few more on the cutting board here that I'll just add in. So those are going into my pan. The next thing you need is 3 cups of water. If you have filtered water, use that. Do not use distilled water. Use filtered water or bottled water that you might pick up. But if all you have is your tap water, the way you can actually make it less filled with all those chemicals that might come through is let your water sit out overnight and it'll get rid of it, or you can boil it. I'm going to use some filtered water, so we're going to get a couple cups here. So we have 2 cups going in right now, and I will get 1 more cup. All right. And what you do is you start boiling this for about 25-30 minutes. And then once you're done boiling it, you add in a cup of honey. And so I have my honey ready. But what I'm going to do, I have some other things that I'm going to be making with the honey today, is I'm going to be putting some garlic infused honey. I'm going to make that so that, and it takes about 2 weeks for that. But elderberry syrup, you can use it right after it's completed. And the honey actually sweetens it, and there's a lot of medicinal properties in that. Now, that's the basic recipe. Half a cup of elderberries dried, or a full cup of fresh, 3 cups of filtered water, and then you have your 1 cup of honey. You just boil everything except the honey. You just get those berries working. The thing that I add to mine, I'm going to actually start this up here, is I add cinnamon. This is a large cinnamon stick. So that's all I'm going to add in there. I'm going to break it and let that go in there. And I'm going to explain why I'm adding these. Then I add some rose hips. And I just take like a little handful. And I don't worry about the stems, and I'll tell you why, is because we're going to strain all of this. So this is like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Let's put 2 more in for 15. But this doesn't amount to even, it's not even half a cup, so it's not even a quarter of a cup. Just a handful of rose hips. Again, you can either have them from your garden if you have them, or you can order them. But I ask you, don't take them from the parks that have them, because they're meant for the parks to be there, not for people to harvest. But you can order them online. The next thing that I'm going to add is I'm going to add in a couple anise seeds. And that's what they look. They're starish, and they smell like licorice. That's really kind of cool, because you think licorice will smell like licorice. It's not, it doesn't. So I am going to put, because of the benefits of anise seeds, I am going to put in 4 of them for this. You don't have to put any of this in. If all you have in your cupboard is just one, just put it in if you're not using it for anything else. Now, I haven't bought them locally. I tend to buy things like this in bulk. So while this is stirring, I'm just going to share a few things and set the timer. Let's see, I want to stir this a little bit just to make sure everything is covered. And then once that's all done, I'm going to strain it, and then I will add my 1 cup of honey. Even though I added those other items, 1 cup of honey will be sufficient for this. But I wanted to go over the benefits of why I make it this way. And so there's a lot of benefits to these products, but what I'm doing is I've written down the key elements of which nutritional or health benefits that are best for it. So the elderberries they provide immune health support. And that's what you want when you're dealing with viral loads. It's antiviral properties and has antibacterial properties. Sometimes when we have a virus, we can also acquire a bacterial infection, which is why you really want to get to that viral infection before it becomes an infection that you end up with green stuff coming out. You want to protect your body from the bacteria. That can happen actually from viral loads. It's anti-inflammatory as well. So as you drink it, it will calm the inflammation that occurs when you have a viral issue going on with your throat and stuff. And it's antioxidant. Now, anise seeds, that helps with cough, and it also helps those with asthma. So this is something that you could actually use whether it's cold out or whatever. If you have allergies, this can be a syrup that you can use every day if you have allergies that are acting up. My husband's allergies are going nuts right now, so I'm making it with him in mind, but I'm also going to take it as a preventative. And all I do is take a teaspoon every day. I take a teaspoon from the drawer, the same one that I use that I put not the same spoon, but the same size that I would put molasses into my coffee. Cinnamon, the reason I put cinnamon in, and mind you, there are so many benefits to each of these items. I'm just listing the ones that are pertinent to this formula that I'm making. Antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral. So if you're having teas, you can throw in a cinnamon stick or sprinkle in a little bit of cinnamon. When you're having toast in the morning, if you're one who enjoys toast, add a little bit of cinnamon into it. Have some honey, throw a little bit of cinnamon on top. It's fabulous. Now, if you don't eat toast, I don't eat toast, but say you're going to have an egg, throw a little bit of cinnamon on that egg. And some of you might say, what are you talking about? If you've never had cinnamon on your egg, try it. It actually tastes pretty good. The rose hips, they help with your immune health. They're antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, but there's a lot of nutritional benefits, and I'm only going to share a few because there's a list of them. It has vitamin C, A, B1, B2, B3, K, carotene, and a lot more. Now, that doesn't mean that you should be taking the rose hips, and by the way, that's the coating inside. There's another little seed, and I just decided the heat is going to open up those coverings, and it'll still get the rose hip benefit. I actually take a rose hip powder supplement that I make because of the vitamin C that's in it. I use that as my C supplement. Honey, there's a variety of nutrients in honey, but it's antioxidant and it suppresses the coughing. Now, if you're making this for children, you want to use, I can't think off the top of my head. Do not use honey. It's a glycerin. There's a food grade glycerin that you want to use that is not manufactured by Big Pharma. It is actually a food grade that you can get. You can get at your natural food store, or you can order online and make sure it's a reputable company. But you can use that in place of honey for your children who are under the age of 1. Please be very careful in using honey for children. Just because we know there's a lot of benefits to honey, your little ones are still developing their immune system. That's why they recommend nursing moms to keep nursing as long as they can, because they're getting their immune support from the breast milk. In saying that, we do not want to introduce honey to them until they're over 1 year old. Now, I'm not, I can't tell you what to do and what not to do, but there is a lot of literature out there that you can read, and I am certain that your pediatrician has told you, do not give your kids honey. It's really important because the bacteria that could be found in honey will affect them. Now, we use it all the time. Honey has so many great benefits, but we have to be mindful of those little ones. Now, this whole thing that I'm making, I use it every single year. I make a new batch every year. And I might end up making a couple because this year, for some reason, my allergies have been acting up quite a bit. And it's because I believe I'm allergic to the hay and straw that I put into the chicken coop. And I go out there and I clean it, and I come in. The days that I clean it really deep, I'm like, I can't breathe. But I come in and I flush my system and I breathe. I use a nebulizer that I make a formula for so that I can at least clean my lungs out. And the formula I use is not a medicinal purchase from the pharmacy. It's one that I make from different stuff, and I can share how I make it. But what I do is when I come in, I drink some water and I use this inhaler, this nebulizer type inhaler. Even though I have a rescue inhaler from my doctor, I prefer to use this to avoid the chemicals that come from our medicine. Now, when I say that, I don't want you to think that I don't believe in Big Pharma completely. They're there for a reason. And sometimes we have to use medicine because our natural remedies are just not enough. So I can do all these natural things and I feel pretty good about it. But sometimes you get an infection, you need something that, because it could take longer holistically unless you're right on top of it all the time. But with this, with the lung stuff and everything else, if you can keep your cold or flu from getting so far, and by the way, it's really important to rest. And I know in today's workforce, even although COVID came and went, and well, I guess it's still here, we've forgotten about the health of employees. And I've been reading some stuff. The worst place that abuses their employees is healthcare. Part of it is when we work in healthcare, when I worked in healthcare, it was like I had to go to work because our mindset is if we don't go in, somebody else has to take the load off us. So that's part of it. So we try to do our best to stay healthy. And many of your physicians desire to see you well. But they're not, the nurses and the other staff and stuff, because they're so short-staffed, oftentimes they have no choice but to go in, whether they're sick or not. So they have to have remedies available to them. And having elderberry syrup can be a really good thing to have on hand. And personally, I'm not afraid of somebody having a cold. I mean, in the healthcare setting, everybody's wearing a mask anyway. So if they cough, it's going into their mask. They're doing what they need to do for something like that. And we should honor that too. Not just in the healthcare, but if you're sick and you decide that I have to go to the pharmacy, the courteous thing is to wear a mask. But I realize that people are not doing that. So I don't live in fear that I'm going to die because somebody coughed around me. I would really appreciate it if you coughed away. But we need to be kind to everybody else and protecting others. So if you don't work in a company that requires you go to work, make sure that you get plenty of rest. And if you do, come home and just rest. Make sure your family knows that you need to sleep. That's harder for single parents with little kids. It's really hard for them. So we need to support those members of society. We need to make sure that reach out and say, hey, can I watch your kids for you because I heard you're not well? Whatever we can do to help one another, we can survive a lot of stuff without a lot of... Do you know people heal better when we know that somebody cares? It's true. So if you have an opportunity and you find out that somebody is ill and the kids are fine, ask, can I watch your kids for you for a couple of hours so you can get a good rest? And then after you rest, get into the shower to kind of like get all that taken care of. I recommend to my husband, get in the shower before you go to bed. The reason is that steam kind of like clears it up. And if you have fresh eucalyptus, put that in your shower because the moisture will allow that eucalyptus to also help your breathing as well. These are just some ideas. We've got the viral season here in the New England area, and I'm sure across our country. I don't know all the dynamics across the country. I just know that the winter season is here, and we have to protect our bodies by building our immune system. And that's why I shared what some of these items are, what they have in them, the properties that will benefit our immune system. So this has another 35 minutes because I'm letting it boil for 45 minutes and it's going to get down, and then I will add the honey. So I'm not going to talk for another 35 minutes because all I'll do is I'll be repetitive or I'll go on to another tangent. So I'm going to finish this part up, and then I'm going to come back where I add in the honey and then put it in a jar and show you how to use it. Folks, I'll be right back. Enjoy your day. Hi friends, I'm back with the elderberry syrup. I actually cooked it for about 30 minutes because I saw that it was getting thickened up a little bit, and I looked back. My stove tends to cook fast even when I put it on low. And I looked back at the original recipe and it says 30 to 45 minutes. So if it's not getting too thick, you can keep going at 45, but I did it for 30 minutes, and I went back to my other notes from a year ago, and that's how long I typically cook my elderberry. The concoction of stuff that's in there is for 30 minutes with your filtered water. Now what I'm going to do, and I will try to tilt this down so you can see. So it's all done on the stove. And so now I'm going to filter it through on here so I don't get all the stuff into the jar. And unlike tea, because sometimes people will take their tea and reuse it in another cup of tea, this, I would like to believe we got all the nutrients out of the berries and stuff, so I would not reuse this. But I do press it down to get all the juice out of all the berries and all the other ingredients I put through here. And just kind of push it through. And it's really hot, so don't use your fingers, not even with gloves and stuff. Just use a rubber, I can't always talk very clear, with the rubber spatula, kind of like press it through. And this stuff is what's going to happen with this stuff. I'm going to throw it out to the compost. We get a lot of different animals that take inventory of what's out there. So I don't have a problem putting this out there, because if they nibble on the berries or anything, actually I could probably give the berries to the chickens. I'll have to look it up to see. So because there is still stuff on here, and I want that to be a nice clean liquid that we consume, I will use another spatula, and this is where I'm going to be putting in 1 cup of honey. And of the syrup, let's see, how much did I get out of here? I think it's hard to measure with this. Yeah, it's really kind of hard to measure. This is an 8-cup Pyrex, so it starts at the 4-cup measure. So we're going to add in a cup of honey. Now, could you double this? I mean, could you double the recipe? You can, but I think it depends on your family size if you're going to go through it a lot. For us, this is more than enough, and I actually sometimes share this with my daughter. If she says, Mom, could I have some for the kids and for herself? And I don't have a problem giving her some. I just make a new batch every time we run out. Now, I know that there's a lot of sugar in here. I did a video a few days ago, a few videos back, I think it was about a week ago, on a variety of sugars that you can have in your diet. But because this is heavily infused with honey, you don't want to take lots of this. Because something is good for you, it does not mean you should be consuming large amounts. And I had to do a diet summary for one of my physicians because we're trying to find an answer to something. And she thought that, well, maybe I was getting too much sugar. I didn't know that was her reason for asking, but, you know, it's like I found out. And she did some blood work, and she said, you don't eat a lot of sugar foods, do you? I said, no. But I do have sugar in my foods. Like, I might put honey in a tea, but oftentimes I don't anymore because I don't need that sweetness. And that's another thing with this elderberry syrup. If you're one who likes to put honey in your tea, and by the way, I'm sitting here stirring, okay, while I'm talking. If you are one who enjoys honey in your tea, you can take this and put a teaspoon of this in instead. Once your tea has cooled down a little bit to a warmth that you enjoy drinking, put a teaspoon of this in, and then you just get not only the honey, but also the medicinal properties of all these herbs that are in here. And there's technically not a lot. So to recoup, share again the recipe, is just half a cup of dried elderberries. And the reason is you don't use a full cup. Full cup if it's whole berries is because the dried berries have shriveled up, and as you hydrate them, they get larger, and you get all those properties right out. Would it be better to have fresh? Absolutely. But I don't have them. So you do with what you got. And then 3 cups of filtered water, good water. And like I said, if you do not have a filter, you can always just let your water sit out so that those things that are in them from the city can kind of evaporate out. But the better option is to maybe boil your water if you don't have bottled water that you might have picked up. Okay, when I put the honey in, it was kind of thick, and now it's doing really good. It's not so bad. It's stirring really nice, and that's what you want to do, is you want to get as much of it stirred up. So I am going to pour this into a canning jar. It probably will not fill it. Let's see what this says I have here. It doesn't. It's about, I would say it's about 2 cups because it's just under the quart mark. So I could probably use a pint jar, which I may end up pouring it into later, but I don't like to kind of like overfill if I don't have to. So I'm going to put this into the pint jar. Quart jar. Alright, so that's all in there. And since I'm not sharing it with anybody right this second, it tastes very sweet, as I expected, because it's always really sweet because of the honey. But it tastes good too. And all you do is once it's in there, now remember, this whole recipe made a pint. Put the cover on it and you refrigerate it. If you leave it out, you leave it out. But before you use it, stir it up a little bit before you do, just to make sure it's all mixed up really nice. So a teaspoon a day is all you really need. Or if you're having troubles throughout the day, you have a teaspoon each time. Now, if you have diabetes, you might want to talk to your care provider, your doctor, to see how much you can have, because you got to be very careful with sugars and stuff. But for those of us who do not suffer with those type of issues, elderberry syrup has been great. We don't consume it all day, but like I said, you can use it in your tea to sweeten your tea when you're sick and you're having medicinal teas for that. Just put a teaspoon of this in your tea instead of just honey. My husband puts honey in his tea. He will start putting this into his tea. The other thing I'm doing is I'll be putting some in little jars. So like say he's coughing. As I shared, some of the medicinal properties of the herbs that I put in here are great for cough suppression. So if he has some of that in his car, and if he's having a sore throat from whatever whatever he's doing, like working at the house, at work, or working in outside, he could have some of that to just kind of calm the raspiness or the pain that he might be having, or what's causing him to cough a lot. And he's been coughing a lot lately, and part of it is some of the stuff they're going through in the house. So hopefully that is a helpful tip. It's elderberry syrup, half a cup of dried elderberries, 3 cups of filtered water, and a cup of honey. You boil the elderberries in the water for 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how your stove cooks, and then you add in a cup of honey. You can add the other items that I added, which was anise seeds. I just put in a handful. I think I put in 4. Cinnamon stick, a large cinnamon stick, cut it, break it in half and throw that in there. I used rose hips, I think I put 10 in there. And then those are just the only extras that I've put in, and that's what I put in all the time. Now, could I put ginger in? Yeah, but I'm going to make other things. I have other things that I make that have ginger and that kind of stuff. Garlic, I'm going to make my garlic infused honey that we use. So I hope that is helpful. I hope it's something that you are looking forward to maybe making for your own children that are over the age of 1. And like I said, you're going to need food grade glycerin, and you can get that at a pharmacy. You can order online, and you can also get it at your natural food stores. So there's options out there for you to make this yourself. Now, if you don't have the time, or you have issues where you can't focus on making these, they sell elderberry syrup online. Be careful of the brands that you purchase and make sure you get a good quality. Gaia, G-A-I-A, is a nice brand, and I know some other people who use that brand. So you could order something like that to have on hand just for this purpose. Now I expect if this was just David and I, this will last us for the winter. Now, if I share some of this with my daughter and grandchildren, I'm going to give her half. And so I may end up having to make another batch. But that's not a bad concoction. It doesn't cost a lot of money. So it's just a nice natural thing. When you purchase it from somebody who makes it, like the Gaia brand, it costs you some money. But for many people, it just makes life easy. If you're working full time and you've got all these things going on and you don't have time to do what I do, you can get it over the counter. Remember, don't overconsume anything that is good for you. And the reason I say that, a lot of people will think, well, this is really good. It's immune boosting and all that stuff. Yes, but there's a lot of sugar in here. And sometimes too much of a good thing can actually make you really sick. And that's why I say 1 teaspoon a day, just for general getting up in the morning. Put it in your tea and enjoy it that way. Now, my husband's asthma is bothering him. I have a feeling he will use that possibly tonight in his tea. He takes a respiratory blend tea that I've made for him, and I've shared how to make that, and I will link it probably up in one of these cards that I don't know what side it goes to. And I will include that so that you can see how to make an herbal tea for respiratory issues, or you can purchase, there's respiratory blends out there that are really kind of nice. So that's what I'm sharing right now. I'll be back to share some things on how I make garlic infused medicinal options as well. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope you're staying healthy, getting outside, get that fresh air. And I know that sometimes it can cause that sore throat. Get out there anyway. That fresh air is so good for you. And if there's sunshine in your area, get out there and grab that vitamin D. It's not as strong as in the summer, but it's still out there. So take care of yourselves, remain healthy, and do what you can to stay out of the clinics. Have a great day, and God bless you.